And so I have some ideas and excerpts from Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. So I wanted to ask, how many gardeners do we have here today? Kind of. Okay. Well, we gardeners enjoy our hobby for many reasons. A love of plants and nature, the satisfaction that comes from beautifying home and community, the pleasure of the creative effort, the healthful benefits of exercise and outdoor air, and then there is the pleasure in just watching plants grow. That's what I love the best. But now, we gardeners have become very important players in the management of our nation's wildlife. It is now in all of our power to make a significant difference. The difference is the future of biodiversity. Dr. Tallamy and his colleagues have done controlled research projects that have shown the importance of gardening with native plants. The concern has been the fate of the insects that eat the plants, and then in turn the animals that eat the insects. There are too many alien or non-native plants that outnumber the native species, and they do not provide the same type of food and shelter. The researchers believe that gardeners can and will change the world by helping to change what food is available for the local wildlife. We can no longer hope to coexist with other animals if we continue to wage war on their homes and their food supplies. Tallamy believes that gardening with natives is no longer just a peripheral option, but it is an important part of a paradigm shift in our shaky relationship with the planet that sustains us. One that all of us gardeners and home dwellers can no longer afford to ignore. In the Mary Oliver poem, she mentions the willows, honey locusts, beech, oaks, and pines. These are species, all of these trees are native to Wisconsin. She writes, "I would almost say that they save me and daily." Well, she was most likely referring to how she feels emotionally and spiritually in their presence. But these trees literally are essential for our survival of many organisms by providing food and habitat. The Midwest native willows are hosts for 299 species of native butterflies and moths. Honey locust seed pods are important food sources for a wide variety of wildlife, including deer, opossums, rabbits, squirrels, and raccoons. The spring flowers of the honey locust attract bees. Then there's the American beech. This can survive over 400 years and provides a bounty of food for insects, birds, and small mammals. It is one of the most valuable tree species for wildlife, the American beech. The tree is host to ants, aphids, wasps, and over 100 species of moth and butterfly caterpillars. Then the mighty oak. Oak trees provide a rich habitat and support more life forms than any other native trees. A single oak hosts 534 species of caterpillars. A single oak also shelters 147 species of birds, 120 species of mammals, and 60 species of reptiles and amphibians. Jack pines, the only known nesting site for Kirtland's warbler, which is an endangered species. Trees in the genus Pinus support over 200 species of moths and butterflies. So, you all know me here. You know that we like our native plants and trees, and so I want to encourage you to decide to add trees and bushes to your landscape, native trees and bushes, and seriously consider choosing the plant to support wildlife, and you'll hear more about that. Besides the trees I mentioned, crabapple trees support over 300 species, whereas cherry and plum support over 450. There are also bushes, such as blueberry and cranberry, that not only provide humans with nourishment, but also a large variety of others. Tracy is our next speaker and will focus her talk on native plants and her beautiful landscaping at home. But before that, though, I would like to close with several quotes. The first is from William Henry Hudson. He was a naturalist and ornithologist who was born in Argentina in 1841, and he died over 100 years ago in 1922 in London, England. He said, I am not a lover of lawns. Rather would I see daisies, hawkweed, and dandelions with splendid flowers and fairy down, then the too well-tended lawn. So that's a call out for Diana Beck and her love for dandelions. Cultural critic Michael Pollan says, a lawn is nature under totalitarian rule. Totalitarian. I knew I wasn't going to say that right. There are also naturalists I know personally who have said it is better to be a little messy and leave leaves, twigs, and other plant matter to help with creating a healthier soil. So don't be too much of a neatnik either. And with that, we will have Tracy.
Thank you, Jeannie. And welcome everybody again this morning. It's always fun when you get asked to be a part of a service like this. So the three of us that are speaking we don't know what the other one's talking about. It's a real fun ride for us all. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tracy McDermott. I live on a lovely little 2-acre farm that my husband and I purchased almost 15 years ago, and it was completely grown over, completely let go to the wilds, but it was mostly Canada thistle and really bad invasive species. So when we talked about doing a service like this, I thought, oh my gosh, what could I talk about and what could I bring to the table? And I think the number one thing for me and for my family was creating a daily connection with nature, right? And that doesn't mean you have to have 2 acres or even a lot in town. It's where do you go to get your connection with nature? And while a lot of us are blessed to have great yards that we still painstakingly bust our butts on often, some of us live in apartments and need to know where they can go to do those kinds of things. Fortunately, here in Fond du Lac, we have the Godfried Prairie and Arboretum and the Greenway Arboretum, who are 2 sites that are very, very dedicated to native plants and native trees that you can go to and walk and enjoy, and you don't have to have this space. But my husband and I were gluttons for punishment, and we bought this 2-acre property. So I'll share some of the pictures and kind of talk about some of the things that we've done to create a more native space. We are by no means 100% native. I have all kinds of other flowers growing along with natives, but in about 2010, 2011, we really started being dedicated to planting natives. And we do a lot of plants, so lots of forbs are flowering natives, lots of grasses and things like that. So I'm going to focus on that a little bit. But there you can see some really, really great hollyhocks that are not native at all. This is my pollinator yard, so in the spring this is what our grass looks like. Lots and lots of great flowers for bees, right? That's a Wisconsin wood violet. That is a native little flower that grows here. Native plantings were important to us because we knew about the web of life, right? We knew about the insects that are coming to these plants, and we want the birds and we want the wildlife in our yard so that we can enjoy it and that we can be a natural space and kind of give back. We live west of Fond du Lac, and it's a really big farming community, lots and lots of corn, lots of soybeans, lots of winter wheat, and not a lot of naturalized stuff. So there are going to be a few pictures going through, and maybe you'll notice some of the natives in them, and maybe you won't. Maybe you'll notice some of the little native guys that we have a great assortment of species in our yard. Butterflies, the monarchs absolutely love it. It's wonderful, but the species decline, right? That's due to habitat loss, right? So the whole reason you hear a lot about monarchs right now and their species is in decline, and that's all about habitat. It's all about these plants that we're talking about today and getting them into your gardens, getting them into your yards, or supporting places that support these things too, right? For folks who don't have the space, but you know, on a patio balcony, you can put native plants in containers. They would prefer to be in the ground, but you can still put them in containers. You can put stuff, you could put some real pretty brown-eyed Susans, all kinds of things. So So sometimes you just have to get a little creative. The more, going back to bringing nature home and Dr. Doug Tallamy, somebody gave me a copy of Bringing Nature Home, I think in 2015. And then I really dove into what's going on in our world as a whole, right? The fragmented habitat loss, there's little chunks of places, and then all of the species that are trying to live there, they're just killing it, you know, they can't survive. So that's when we really got into starting to add this diversity and add a healthy ecosystem. And then by studying him and following him, he has another book out that's called, it's sitting right there, Nature's Best Hope. I know it would come to me. And that kind of is going into even deeper into what we can do as citizens to kind of help and take care of this ecosystem that we've just absolutely plundered. In that book, he talks a little bit too about the new initiative, which is called, let me get it, homegrownnationalpark.org. So, and this is something really that I just started getting into. That is a group that has been formed by Tallamy and his associates, and you can actually get your property on a map, and they're mapping out the whole United States to see where these hubs of this great biodiversity is, and kind of we're making a homegrown national park, right? We're connecting all of these parks that we have and making more habitat. So on these two slides, it talks about keynote species, key great plants, and where they grow, right? And on the eastern, it's hard for me. I can do this to see from over there. And I can certainly share this information, but if you Google this or if you go online and homegrownnationalpark.org, you will find all this information. There is, I mean, so much information there on social media. So if you're a social media person, I'm getting great Instagram stuff every day on my feed about native plants, which is awesome. And then true to Jeannie's talk with her species, and I heard all the gasps of how many species live in these trees, I'll delight your ears with some flowering shrubs, because I think this is great too. So asters, right, there's a lot of species of asters, but the seeds are eaten by many, many birds, and they host 112 species of caterpillar and butterfly, caterpillars of butterflies and moths. So, I mean, when you think of just having, maybe I'll just put one by my mailbox, you could potentially be bringing over 100 species to your yard just with that one plant. You know, putting it here, putting it on the corner of your house. Joe Pye weeds, seeds are also a really great thing for them, but they do host 42 species of the caterpillars. Goldenrods, loved by finches. Goldenrods, and I'm talking, you know, a wide variety of species. There's a lot of species of goldenrods that are native to Wisconsin. 115 species of caterpillars, like, it just blows my mind. But then when you think, you know, a chickadee couple, right? They have to feed almost 10,000 caterpillars to raise a brood. So when you think of these little birds smaller than this note card, and they have to go and collect that many to raise one family, and they usually do 2 or 3. So when you think about these numbers are piddly compared to what these birds actually need to raise their families. It's actually really, really mind-blowing the more you dive into it. I think there's one more slide for me. I can't remember what it says. It's a good one, though. Oh, it is a good one because it tells you where to locally get natives. There's a whole chunk of Wisconsin listed of planters. And then off to the right side, yeah, that's the right, Hensies, and right here in Fond du Lac actually has a huge section, and they've been growing it, but now there's a total native plant section. So if this is something that really sparks you, you can go right down to Hensies. You can get that. There are a couple of organizations closer, Wild Ones and the Godfrey Prairie and Arboretum, do plant sales in the spring. So that's a way to get this going in your yard. And then also, I was talking with Jeannie, I have this great little book And it's put out by the, oh goodness, now it's my turn to, but the Ornithology Society and WisconsinConservation.org. I'm going to make copies of this because it is, you can do it by law, it says right on the back, because I don't know where I got it, and maybe I'll try to get real copies, but I'm going to put copies here for if anybody that wants it. It lists all of that tree information that Jeannie was talking about with the species. It lists it for vines, it lists it for grasses, it lists it for flowers, shrubs. The back of it is just so much great information. So watch for it here. And with that, we will have a little rest, and then we get to hear Sylvia's story. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
So I can't seem to do anything without getting a little weird, so prepare yourselves. When I think of nature, like everybody else, I think of plants and animals and ecosystems and all that good stuff. But in recent years, more and more, I'm thinking about the massive, intelligent force, if you want to call it that, that is essential part of the planet, which runs everything and is everywhere. And I realized as I was prepping for this that an aspect of nature is what flows through every living thing. So it's like if you're alive, nature is providing that vitality, which is an amazing concept in itself. What I'm talking about today is really mostly sourced by this book that I have by Michelle Small Wright called Co-Creative Science, A Revolution in Science Providing Real Solutions for Today's Health and Environment. And basically what she's talking about is the partnership between nature and humans that can be a conscious and intentional partnership. It's not easy to talk to nature because nature is such a totally different form of intelligence than any of us are accustomed to. But given that, I'm pretty sure that had we consulted with nature when we put our prairie in a few years ago, that might have gone differently because we put a whole buttload of fertilizer in there. And I think nature would have said, no, don't do that. What's happened is our prairie plants are all like 10 feet tall. And even the ones that appear in other places are still 10 feet tall. It's not like, you know, it was just about the fertilizer. It was about something it did to the whole plant, which is a little weird, but, you know, I'm sure that nature would have known better. So basically, her point, well, first I should mention that she dedicated her life to creating flower essences, which essentially are designed to cure and tone the human electrical system. So that's what she is all about for her whole life. And she worked consciously with nature to develop all of those essences. And then it really expanded with a few other things that she did. But spent her life basically doing this. And in the course of doing that, of course, she had to have the plants to do the flower essences. So she has a space in Virginia, I don't know how large it is, called Perelandra, which is a huge botanical area that she maintains as part of doing this. But one of the points that she makes is that it's kind of a natural partnership between humans and nature because of what their roles would be. So the part that humans would do is to provide the definition, the direction, and the purpose of an object or a system, whereas nature provides the order, the organization, and the life vitality. So it's, and nature constantly is driven by the principle of balance. Everything in nature is balanced. Humans are the exception to that, I suppose, because what drives, the principle driving humans is free will, which can get you out of balance pretty easily, I think. The indigenous understood this relationship. They were able to bring rain or whatever was needed. Not all of them, but the ones that understood it and were able to work with that were able to make remarkable things happen because of their ability to work with nature. So nature is best described as a flow, and it has 3 basic levels. I don't know entities, whatever, it's all spirit-based. But the levels are, there's a creative level called the Divik, or Deva of whatever. So you have a Deva of rhubarb, for example. And that Deva defines the form. So it establishes the DNA, the whole development sequence. It creates essentially a blueprint for what this item is going to be. And then that being done, you have the nature, what we've always called nature spirits, which, you know, this is part of a flow. It's the nature spirits are the part that are essentially flowing through all of the living things. And then there's the pan level. And the pan level of nature is, think executive function. Basically knows how the others work together. So if you're talking to nature, you need to talk to Pan, because Pan brings the others together as needed. So it's, you know, how do you talk to them? That's a really good question. But Michelle Small Wright, and she spends a fair amount of time in almost every book she puts out, and I've viewed several of them. Is muscle testing. And there are a lot of ways to do muscle testing, but she spends a lot of time on a particular method that she likes and recommends, which I somehow picked up from her like 30 years ago, and I trust it now. It's something I use all the time. But as far as talking to nature, I'm only recently diving into that. So if we were to give an example of how you would do this, I want to take a front yard garden. We're going to have a front yard garden. And if you don't plan to use the whole front yard, you need to start with nature right up front and say, where's this going to be? Is it over here, you know, up here? So they'll help you figure it out. Then you have to define what the purpose of this garden is going to be. So I want a garden that's going to be almost all native species, but there could be something else if need be. I want it to be showy blossoms, all of it. Color doesn't matter. I want it to bloom from early spring to late fall. Something's blooming. It doesn't have to be the whole garden all at once. And I don't want any plant that's more than 2 feet tall. And so then I start to research plants that might work in the space that we've defined and figure out, the things that we gardeners all think we kind of have a handle on, things like soil development and all of that stuff, actually is nature's best thing. They know all of that. I say they, I have no idea what this looks like. But, you know, things like what kind of soil you should have. So like, that's where we would have learned from, you know, don't put all that fertilizer on that prairie. And actually, I did this year for our garden. And they said, let's see, I got this here. Yes to compost, yes to peat moss, yes to prairie debris, no to commercial fertilizer. So, and that isn't necessarily apply to everything. It's like whatever you're doing in this spot for this purpose, you know, what do you need? So I don't know that, I haven't done enough of these to know that nature always says no commercial fertilizer. They also said yes to putting peat moss on the top as a weed and moisture control function. So then you do your research, you make your little list. It's got all these plants that you think might work. You can go outside the list, but it's kind of hard. You got to go do some 20-question thing that you can do with yes, no. Excuse Excuse me. So that's most of what I meant to get at. But, oh, the picture. This is fun. You can all do this right away. Just find a spot in your yard that you're willing to essentially abandon to nature. So you designate it. This is the plot between our prairie, which would be on the right of the picture, and the back of our property, which is on the left. And that whole space is a nature sanctuary now. So once you declare it a nature sanctuary, nobody goes in there. You don't mow the grass, you don't do anything in there, you don't fertilize, etc. And you just declare it a nature sanctuary. You know, might want to take photographic records of it just to, from a distance, just to see what, what it's doing. So it could be fun. So with that fun thought, I suggest you have to tell nature in whatever way you can. I think just announcing it would do, that this is a nature sanctuary and I'm not going in here anymore. You could rope it off, whatever you feel like doing. So anyway, have fun with that.